a cup of cappuccino with them, and so on and so on. So again, we live in, I will try to develop this later a little bit, we live in very interesting ideological times today. You should always bear in mind this, that, you know, when I was young, it was still the standard leftist ideology, which was, we in relatively prosperous Western countries, we live in our ivory tower of false welfare, but outside there are starving others, and so on and so on. Today, this is the ruling ideology. Bill Gates is saying this all the time. What is the meaning of who cares about computers when people are still starving of diarrhea in Africa, and so on and so on. And this has a precise ideological function, I claim. First, it is an emergency state logic to prevent politicization. Because then when you listen to Bill Gates and all those guys, the story always goes on. So let us stop with our stupid ideological issues, critique of capitalism, whatever. People are suffering there. Forget about politics and ideology. Let's all get together, private business, state, charity. Let's just do something and help them. It is precisely a call to do something and don't think. Don't think, don't politicize, do something. The other thing, and I think this is so unique about today's more and more functioning of publicity, which is why I really think that Starbucks is the example of today's ideology, is that you remember when we were young, at least that's my case, we still had this split between private consumerism and doing something for the community. Like, you know, privately you are spending money, blah, 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 then I don't know, you engage in some charitable activity or so. The uniqueness of Starbucks is kind of a pseudo-Hegelian dialectical synthesis. No? The uniqueness of Starbucks, among others, is that you can do both in one and the same gesture. As it were, as they just read what they say in their ads, their coffee is more expensive because the humanitarian moment is included into it. You know, as they say, we buy our coffee only organically grown, it's organically grown, we give part of profit to help the children to get school, to help them to get water. It's as if telling you, you feel guilty about being a consumerist, no problem, pay a little bit more and the price for it is included into it. So that you know, and the message is wonderful, pay $50 more for coffee and we guarantee you that by being a consumerist, you already do your anti-consumerist duty. You know, you cancel the effects. And it would be nice, it may sound cynical, but I think it's fundamental to read charitable activity, even green, much of green ecological activity like this today. How? The point is not really to help nature, the poor. The point is to make you feel good while you consume. That's the extra price that you pay. For example, let me be very brutal. I'm often attacked for this, but when people like to buy organic apples, do you really believe that those apples are so much better? I don't think that those half-rotten apples which cost double are. No, I think the reason you buy them is for pure, you buy ideology there. You know, I pay more, but isn't it wonderful? This makes me a member of self-conscious humanity doing something for the Mother Earth. It makes you feel warm, you know, like I do something for Mother Earth, I'm part of the great movement. You are buying this ideological dimension. But nonetheless, let us go on. So the first point being, I don't like all this logic of, you know, I claim that this priority of the vulnerable, precarious other involves a certain constellation which still allows you to retain priority. Second point, I want to focus on what is excluded from this vulnerable other. Here I give all the honor to Jacques Derrida, who in one of his late books on animals, that animal, cet animal que je suis, the animal that I am, of course the paraphrase of Descartes, where he focuses on another gaze, which typically is, as Derrida emphasizes, excluded, explicitly excluded by Levinas, the gaze of a wounded, suffering animal. Derrida begins his exploration of this phenomenon with reporting on a kind of primordial scene from his own life. After awakening, he goes naked to his bathroom, where his cat follows him. Then the awkward moment occurs. He is standing in front of the cat, which looks at his naked body. Unable to endure this situation, he does something. Puts a towel around his waist, chases the cat outside, enters the shower, and so on. The cat's gaze stands here for the gaze of the other, an inhuman gaze, but for this reason, all the more the other's gaze in all its abyssal impenetrability. Seeing oneself being seen by an animal is an abyssal encounter of the other's gaze, since, precisely because we should not simply project onto the animal our inner experience, something is returning the gaze which is radically other. And I think Derrida is right in pointing out that the entire history of philosophy is based upon a disavowal of such an encounter. I remember, here I will be very personal, seeing years ago a photo of a cat after it was submitted to some lab experiments in a centrifuge. Its bones half broken, its skin half hairless, her eyes helplessly looking into the camera. This is the gaze of the other, disavowed not only by philosophers, but by humans as such. One of the few exceptions is here, he should be honored. Jeremiah Bentham, who made the simple proposal, instead of asking, can animals reason and think, can they talk? You know, all these boring philosophical questions to which then you have all this series of binary oppositions, like we humans can really talk, animals just exchange signs. We live in a world, animals are wordless. Or the Heideggerian version, we relate to death, animals are not really dying. Or even Lacan's version. Animals can cheat, but only we humans can cheat to cheat. Like what the animal that Lacan's idea can't do is, let's say you expect me to lie, so I can dupe you by telling the truth, counting on the fact that you will think it's a lie. You know, the old story of Freudian joke, why are you telling me you're going to Krakow when you are really going to Krakow? So again, instead of asking this question, Jeremiah Bentham claims we should rather ask a simple question, can they, the animals, suffer? Human industry alone is continuously causing immense suffering of animals, which is systematically disavowed. Not only laboratory experiments, but special regimes to produce eggs and milk, like turning artificial light on and off to shorten or lengthen the day, use of hormones, and so on. Pigs who are half blind and barely able to walk, just fattened fast to be slaughtered, and so on and so on. All of us know what goes on here. But this knowledge has to be neutralized so that we can act as if we don't know. One of the ways to facilitate this ignorance is the Cartesian notion of animal-machine. Cartesians were warning people against compassion with animals. The idea is that when we see an animal emitting sounds of pain, we should always bear in mind that these sounds do not express any real inner feeling. Animals do not have souls, they are just sounds, these sounds generated by a complex mechanism of muscles, bones, fluids, and so on, that you can clearly see through dissection. The problem is that the notion of animal-machine quickly ends up in La Mettrie's notion of l'homme machine, of a human being as a machine. If you are a fully committed neurobiologist, exactly the same claim can be made about sounds and gestures emitted by humans when they are in pain. There is no separate interior domain of soul where the pain is really made. So, what should we do here? What if, that's my proposal, the perplexity of a human looking at a cat, what if this perplexity in the animal's gaze tortured animal's gaze is the perplexity aroused by the monstrosity of the human being itself. What if a human sees in the abyss of the wounded animal's gaze, what he sees there reflected is his own monstrosity? Or, in Hegelian terms, what if instead of asking what is substance for subject, how can subject grasp the substance, we should ask the obverse question: what is the rise of the subject for pre-subjective substance? My favorite Catholic theologist, Gilbert Keith Chesterton, proposes such a reversal precisely apropos men and animals. Instead of asking what are animals for humans, for our experience, one should ask what man is for animals. In his lesser-known essay, Everlasting Man, Chesterton makes a wonderful mental experiment along these lines, imagining the monster that man might have seemed at first to the merely natural animals around him. A quote from Chesterton: "The simplest truth about man is that he is a very strange being, almost in the sense of being a stranger on the earth. In all sobriety, he has much more of the external appearance of one bringing alien habits from another land than of a mere growth of this one. Man has an unfair advantage and an unfair disadvantage. He cannot sleep in his own skin. He cannot trust his own instincts. He is at once a creator moving miraculous hands and fingers and a kind of cripple. He is wrapped in artificial bandages called clothes. He is propped on artificial crutches called furniture. His mind has the same doubtful liberties and the same wild limitations. Alone among the animals, man is shaken with the beautiful madness called laughter." Again, another distinction of which I am not so sure. As if he had caught sight of some secret in the very shape of the universe, hidden from the universe itself. Alone among the animals, man feels the need of averting his thought from the root realities of his own bodily being. Whether we praise this thing as natural to man or abuse them as artificial in nature, they remain in the same sense unique. So what I'm saying is that I'm definitely not trying to convince you into some new age attitude of, in the animal gaze we see how animals feel the same as us, understand us, and then you end up with all this bullshit of trees secretly talk among themselves and so on. No, but what I'm saying is that nonetheless, it's much sadder, is that if you turn around the perspective and ask simply yourself, not what does it mean for you, this gaze of the frightened animal, but what the animal, what do you see? Do you see in the animal's gaze? I think you see your own monstrosity. You see precisely that which philosophers don't want to see. In short, I cannot develop it now, read my next book and so on, the 51st that you have said. You see what Freud called death drive. You see that excessive violence of which good philosophers were aware. For example, just briefly, Immanuel Kant has a wonderful small text unknown on education, where he provides his famous definition of what is man. Man is an animal who needs a master. And then he explains why. He says that there is a kind of, he uses the term